President Ghani, dear friends, Afghan friends, Secretary Albright, Secretary General, dear ambassadors, generals, ladies and gentlemen, this is a great moment, and welcome to history, into history. Welcome to the National Archives. And I would like really to extend a warm thank you to you, Mr. Director David Ferriero. We know that it is an effort to host this delegation, but we feel at home because you are hosting a lot of treasures here. You are the vigilant guardian of those treasures, and among those, the Treaty of Washington. I mean, the Treaty of Washington is, like many other documents here, is a living document. And the spirit and the lines of the treaty are very much relevant today: freedom, democracy, the rules of law, and that's why we are here today. And I think that the founder of the writer, the founder of the treaty, couldn't foresee what would happen, but they make it happen. They make it possible. And now this is our role to push that for the future. So thank you very much. Thank you for your people. And now I leave the floor to our Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg. Thank you.
Thank you, General Paloméros, and thank you for inviting me here, because I really appreciate to be here tonight, to be able to take part in this event to honor President Ghani. And President Ghani, I would like to tell you that for many years I believed it was difficult to be Prime Minister in Norway. Then I believed it was difficult to be Secretary General of NATO. But after I have studied you, I understand that my jobs have been very, very, what should I say, simple and easy jobs. I think you have one of the most challenging and most demanding and most difficult jobs in the world. And therefore it is really a great honor to be here tonight and to take part in this event to honor you. And you have already demonstrated that you are very committed to the task of leading Afghanistan for the benefit of all Afghans. You are committed to the good of the whole country. And this is demonstrated by the fact that you have established a national unity government with the Chief Executive, Dr. Abdullah. And I appreciate so much that you are able to stay together and to keep Afghanistan united, and that the national unity government is so important to achieve exactly that. You are committed to partnership and to a peaceful, democratic and united Afghanistan. And your commitment has set a strong and important example and a very clear course for the future of your nation. For more than a decade, NATO and our partners have stood with Afghanistan. Together with the Afghan security forces, we have worked to overcome a dark and dangerous period, when Afghanistan served as a breeding ground and a launching pad for terrorism. When the potential of the Afghan people was brutally restrained, and its place in the international community was tarnished. Today's Afghanistan is not just different, it is completely renewed, because of the courage of those who have fought and those who have continued to fight for Afghanistan's future. We must always remember their sacrifice. And we should also acknowledge all those who are working to build democratic institutions, economic prosperity, and a proud Afghan nation. President Ghani, you are leading Afghanistan through a hopeful and determined time. You have articulated and formulated a vision for a brighter future for your country, and you are taking important steps to implement that vision. NATO stands with you, and we will continue to stand with you and the people of your great country. I look forward to continue to cooperate and to work together with you, and I think it's a great honor for me to be able to say congratulations on the honor you are receiving tonight. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Fred Kempe, President and CEO of the Atlantic Council. Secretary General Stoltenberg, thank you so much for those remarks. General Paloméros, thank you for your leadership. I also want to salute a couple of other people in the room, leaders of the Atlantic Council. First and foremost, a former Supreme Allied Commander, Europe, Marine Commandant, National Security Advisor, General Jim Jones, who is the chairman of our Brent Scowcroft Center for International Security. General Jones, are you here? Please, if you could stand so we can give you a round of applause. Thank you so much. We have two executive vice chairs of the Atlantic Council here, Steve Hadley, former National Security Advisor, and Adrian Arsht. Please, if you could stand so we can applaud you. And then two other board members, important board members, Rafik Bisri and Zal Khalizad, thank you as well. If there are any other board members in the audience I failed to acknowledge, please let me keep my job. I really like it, but this is who I knew was here. Secretary General Stoltenberg, General Paloméros, you lead the alliance at a moment of historic significance. This NATO transformation seminar is halfway between Wales and Warsaw. More importantly, it is on the road to history. The history we will make in the years ahead could be very good. It could be disastrously bad. Much will depend on the leadership of individuals like you who represent, and I would say this about all the ambassadors in the room who have come here for this transformation story, that it's going to be dependent on individuals like all of you who represent your governments at such important levels at such a critical time. Distinguished President Ghani, Secretary Albright, who also happens to be an honorary director of the Atlantic Council, ministers, members of the diplomatic corps, members of the Atlantic Council. We are gathering here at a pivotal moment. We at the Atlantic Council have compared this moment to 1919, the end of World War I, 1945, the end of World War II, 1989, the end of the Cold War. Such periods are usually extended, not just a one-year period. What unifies them is leadership decisions at these plastic moments in history shape generations. At such points, the vision of great leaders has outsized importance, as do leadership failures. In order to shine a large spotlight on the sort of leadership we believe rises to the challenges of our times, we present our Atlantic Council Distinguished Leadership Awards each year. The actual awards will be on April 30th, but I thought it was a little bit inhumane to ask President Ghani to come back that soon after his visit this week. So just by pure coincidence, I would actually call it fate, we had a chance to present him our most important award, the Distinguished International Leadership Award for a political leader, before this NATO audience. The new year marked the end of the largest NATO operation since the Cold War, ISAF. At the mission's peak, more than 130,000 troops from 50 countries were stationed in Afghanistan. Thanks to the alliance's resolve and the resolve of the Afghan people to succeed against all odds and expectations, Afghanistan staged a successful election last year that brought about the first democratic and peaceful transition of power in the country's history. The result is a unity government under the leadership of President Ashraf Ghani. It's not my job to introduce you this evening, President Ghani. Your friend and mentor, Secretary Albright, has that honor and privilege. Yet I have known you a good many years, engaging in long conversations, often at the American Diner in Chevy Chase, aimed at achieving not just a successful Afghanistan, a vibrant, dynamic South Asian region, but our conversations went broader than that. So Secretary Albright, with your indulgence, give me one paragraph. The vote from our jury at the Atlantic Council on providing you our award this year, President Ghani, was enthusiastic and unanimous. There was little debate because our jury knew you. You joined the ranks of President George H.W. Bush, President Clinton, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, the NATO Secretary General Rasmussen. This is a great group of people. But in the jury, the words that kept coming up were integrity, vision, commitment, courage. U.S. officials sometimes describe you as difficult because you push hard for Afghan interests, but you never do it to score cheap points. You do it for the greater good. Your quote last night at the State Department will stay in my mind for many years. Leadership is about sacrifice, you said. Leadership is not about privilege. You embody that. To introduce our guest of honor, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage our remarkable, indispensable, do you mind that I use that? Former Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright. There are secretaries of state who achieve much in office. There are secretaries of state who achieve much after they have left office. There are few secretaries of state who achieve much in office and also after they have left office. That takes a special kind of talent. Secretary Albright is that former Secretary of State and is that talent. All those in this audience know of her commitment to the alliance through her many positions, including leading the group of experts that helped produce NATO's new strategic concept. She has the alliance in her bloodstream. From early on, Secretary Albright recognized the stakes at play in Afghanistan. At the height of the war in Afghanistan, 2009, Secretary Albright shared with me during our annual Bronislaw Goremek lecture that, quote, success would improve the prospects for stability not only in Afghanistan but throughout the region. Failure, on the other hand, could heighten our risks for many years to come, possibly producing yet another generation of terrorists and pushing Pakistan to the brink. She stressed, quote, in Afghanistan, a world at risk must look to Afghanistan's strengths. Secretary Albright, I'm not sure you could have envisioned with all your amazing foresight the fact that we might honor Dr. Ghani as the leader of a united Afghanistan tonight. Secretary Albright, the stage is yours.
It's hard to leap up on the stage in high heels. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be here this evening, and I'm especially pleased by my assignment tonight. The Atlantic Council's Distinguished International Leadership Award is given annually to a global figure who has made an enduring contribution to the international community. That's a somewhat bland way of describing a doer, which is my preferred term for the gentleman we honor this evening. Like many in this room, I have known Ashraf Ghani for years. We first got to know each other when he served on a UN-sponsored commission on the legal empowerment of the poor, which I co-chaired with Hernando de Soto. I must say that I was immediately impressed by Ashraf Ghani. He was a brilliant economist, a provocative thinker, and a compelling international figure. He also didn't hesitate to make his opinions known, but then again, shrinking violets don't go very far in Afghan politics. More than anything else, what struck me about Ashraf was his complete devotion to the country of his birth. Indeed, so committed was he to the Afghan people that he left a life of comfort in the United States to help them at their time of greatest need. The truth is that Ashraf Ghani has always been there for the Afghan people. So I was very enthusiastic when they elected him to serve as their president last year, and I was truly inspired when he assumed office peacefully in a transfer of power carried out in accordance with the Afghan Constitution. The inauguration was a milestone for the Afghan people, the United States, and the entire international community, which has poured so much blood and treasure into Afghanistan for the past 13 years. In the month since President Ghani and his unity government have already set a new tone and established a new way of doing business. He has rebuilt his country's relations with its long-standing partners, making heartfelt gestures of gratitude for the many sacrifices that have been made. He has refocused the international community on the important work that is left for us to accomplish, giving the world confidence that Afghanistan's government is committed to the rule of law and protecting the rights of its people, including Afghan women and girls. But above all, he has offered hope to the Afghan people and to the world, hope that we can turn the page and begin writing what he has called a new book of cooperation, understanding, and engagement. Last year, The Economist said that President Ghani, and I quote, could be the only man up to an almost impossible job. I agree with that assessment, in part because I know he has the help of a very strong woman, and he has wisely admitted that his wife Rula is much smarter than him. But my confidence in Ashraf Ghani only deepened when I spent some time with him last month at the Munich Security Conference. It was our first meeting since he had assumed the presidency, and I expected that I might find him, like other leaders I've known, to be worn down by the burdens of his office. But that was not the case at all. Rather than being overwhelmed by his new responsibilities, he was energized by them. Rather than being paralyzed by the challenges facing Afghanistan, he was seized by the many opportunities he sees ahead. What this tells me is that President Ghani has always understood that his mission was to help his country and his people. By bestowing upon President Ghani this honor tonight, we express our full support for him and for that all-important mission, because what happens in Afghanistan matters deeply to all of us, and his success and the Afghan people's success will ultimately be our success as well. So let me thank the Atlantic Council for hosting us tonight in this beautiful historic space, and I must say we just went to look at the U.S. Constitution, and for giving us the opportunity to reaffirm our solidarity with the people of Afghanistan. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to present the Atlantic Council's Distinguished International Leadership Award to a true statesman and a very dear friend, President Ashraf Ghani.
In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, Secretary Albright, Mr. Kempe, Secretary General Stoltenberg, General Paloméros, General Jones, many friends, many distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm humbled by the words of the introduction. First of all, I'd like to thank the great team in Afghanistan that is helping me. It is, if this award is bestowed on me, it is because I'm represented and assisted by a very able team, so I'd like my team to stand up. Some of the women are missing, but I think they have a parallel meeting. Please do sit down. No one could ask for a better team. These colleagues are putting 14 to 16 hours a day routinely. Some are volunteering. Every one of them had an alternative to refuse a difficult challenge. I'm extraordinarily lucky that they've joined me in this common quest. Secondly, I'd like to take advantage of the presence of the Secretary General of NATO and of the distinguished generals to thank you on behalf of the Afghan people for an extraordinary partnership. The Secretary General shared with me that the ISAF flag will be saved in Brussels. More than 50 nations, both members of NATO and affiliates and partners, took part in Afghanistan. This was an extraordinary statement of global solidarity, and I'd like to thank every one of those nations, you as their collective leader, Ms. Secretary General, and to thank you and to pay tribute to the sacrifice of the NATO soldiers who paid the ultimate sacrifice in Afghanistan. I hope that you'll convey our deepest gratitude and sympathies to their families. Also, hundreds of NATO soldiers were wounded and will be carrying those wounds. We will remember them for that sacrifice. But more than anything else, others got to know us, and please do invite them back. I also want to thank NATO for having followed up the ISAF, or the International Security Force mission, with the Resolute Support Mission. The framework nations, the Secretary General of NATO is to be awarded a prize for creativity for putting with pressures under uncertainty. And this is truly the case. The date of the inauguration was unknown. The date of transfer of authority was unknown. The formation of the government in Afghanistan was in doubt. And he had to plan for continuation of that mission. I want to thank you for your clear-eyed focus, for staying with us. You could have easily had the excuse to walk out. You didn't. And again, after my inauguration and the intense discussions we've had, you've been steadfast in putting the Resolute Support Mission. So I salute you for your leadership. And I'm looking very much, but whenever I pay compliments, in part, there's a next phase, and that is that we want to make the enduring partnership a reality, and I'm looking very much forward to interacting with you. This is important. And in this phase, as Fred Kempe commented, we are in one of those open moments in history. Dean Acheson put it just right. His memoirs were called Present at Creation. And what he said was that they managed to get half the world right. Secure it for freedom, for democracy. In 1945, let us not forget, democracy was considered an endangered phenomenon. The then consensus of the intellectuals was that socialism and communism would be the winning formula. It took enormous focus and attention by that type of leadership to create NATO and turn it into enduring phenomena. But I don't think in their wildest imagination they would have thought that NATO's most difficult mission would be in Afghanistan. But it does show, and I want to pay tribute to General Jones, who was Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, for engaging in Afghanistan. And for also introducing me to Fred Kempe, who became a lifelong friend as a result of the introduction that you've provided. And General Jones, you've always been an extraordinary friend, and you remain engaged. And you never change, regardless of what position you hold, whether you're National Security Advisor or Supreme Allied Commander, your willingness to be accessible is enormous. And if I may tell the story, with your permission, between college and graduate school, General Jules drove a taxi in Washington and was so wonderful with clients that they would ask him for by name and pay him twice. It shows that characteristic of both determination, courtesy, and focus that has so characterized your leadership. And the generals that you sent us to Afghanistan were remarkable men and women. And I'd like to thank you for that friendship and the determined effort. Atlantic Council has been a second home to me. And my friendship with Fred Kempe has been intense, multidimensional, and focused on the globe. Fred has turned the Atlantic Council from one of the think tanks to the premier think tank in Washington. His leadership, his vision, and his remarkable ability to persuade his friends to part with money is really extraordinary. I understand that he's trying to persuade an Afghan American to part with considerable sums of money or become instrumental in that. And Zal, without naming names, I hope that you become instrumental in that. I'd also like to acknowledge my long friendship with Zal Khalilzad. We've shared a very eventful 50 years together. We met as high school students from two different schools in Kabul through the American Field Service program. We left Afghanistan on the same day to come to the United States, and then we left on the same day to go to the American University of Beirut. Zal, thank you for the long-term friendship. Our paths have always crossed, and I'm looking very much forward to your more intense engagement with Afghanistan. And it's wonderful that you're serving on the board of the Atlantic Council. And about Stephen Hadley, what can one say other than immense charm, focus, and wisdom? Steve, thank you for that enormous wisdom at any time that I've needed advice. Afghanistan has suffered, but we are a resilient people. What people must understand about us are our two sides. One is that those who come in anger to us never leave. Coming is easy, but departure is very difficult. From Alexander down, they've made the wrong calculations, and it's been difficult. But the other side of our character, unfortunately, the first side, has become our stereotype. The other is that hospitality, warmth, friendship, are characteristics that really embody our values. And our request is extraordinarily simple. Our consensus. We just want to be able to breathe normally. You know, I've held kids in my arms who were playing volleyball. Their bodies were mashed. But I stood next to their parents because it's my duty to receive any wounded child in Afghanistan at the hospital. And I'm usually at a military hospital or a civilian hospital doing that. But then their parents come to me, and you know what they say? Nobody is going to beat us into submission. If they think they can wipe us out by killing our children, they need to think twice. And I went to a place where a lot of people were killed, and an elder spoke. He had lost his grandchildren, his nephew, his brother. But what he spoke about most, and that's the message that I'd like to share with you, is peace. He said, I do not want the peace of the gun. I want the peace of the book. The textbook where my grandchildren can learn where my granddaughter can be a doctor, where I can participate, where their world would be radically different than mine. You've spoken with enormous courtesy and exaggeration about my limited capabilities. I'm humbled by your words. But my energy, the imagination, if I have any, and the focus comes from the enormous trust that the people of Afghanistan have bestowed upon me. I was away 24 years. My family has been displaced every generation, the last 7 generations. But we have this capability to regenerate. And for the Afghan electorate to have selected me is a vote regarding the future. What we are determined to do is not to become victims of history, not to repeat history, but to overcome it, and in the process, make new history. In this endeavor, the award that you've bestowed me gives me the staying power to focus even more, and once again, I hope to become a bridge for these brilliant colleagues who would succeed me in orderly processes, and so that Afghanistan can be known to meet the test of continuity. And the test of continuity is that transfer of the highest office in the land will go from one elected leader to another without a hitch. What I consider the test is not just peace, not just prosperity, but the highest test that we in the Muslim world, frankly, have had difficulty: succession to high office through orderly process. So what I'd like to be a catalyst for is a remarkable team of young men and women, and hopefully from among them also the first woman president of Afghanistan. Thank you and good night.